Hi, my friends. Welcome back to Healing Together, a YouTube channel dedicated to telling God stories. Stories about how God comes and steps into our lives at the most opportune times, many times saving us from our very own selves. That was my story with my burns, and that is the story today that Harley tells us and Sandy tells us. We are going to use the same format. We're going to hear a little bit about Harley and Sandy, how they grew up, how they met, a little bit about their marriage, their very early days, and then we are going to hear about later on in their lives. We're going to also hear about how they came to Christ, came to faith. Fairland Church, they talk about, was a part of my uncle's church, and so we have a connection there. Harley and Sandy have been longtime friends of ours, and so come along and hear how they got saved, how they met, how they got saved, and then he's going to share a story of a motorhome accident and how God formulated from before they ever left our area to protect them in Colorado, where they were involved in a very, very serious motorhome accident. Come along. Let's hear what God does in this edition of Healing Together. Here's Harley and Sandy Bunch. Harley, why don't you tell me about your growing up? I understand you grew up a lot like the Fletchers grew up. So tell me a little bit about your growing up and up to where you met Sandy.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we were raised out in the country, and my father was a foreman, supervisor in a Tark Equipment Company. So he worked nights, and during the day, of course, I went to school, and then after that, I had my chores to do. We had horses and things to keep me busy around the farm, and then I had a paper route. I run that paper route for almost 5 years. And many customers. I was busy. I was kept busy. And they always figured if I was busy, I couldn't get in trouble. But of course that didn't work. And I went into the high school on a bus in probably 56. And I met my bride at 57. And my homeroom. And I just took one look at her, and I found out she was from Nebraska and everything, and I thought, boy, wow, that's a good crop of corn there.
Yeah.
They were high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I love
nice,
it.
nice.
That's wonderful.
Sandy, what about you?
Grew up in Nebraska, lived across the street from my grandmother, who liked everything I love, with the birds and the garden, the flowers, and chickens, and pond. Anyway, there was a small town. There were a few abandoned buildings, also kind of like a one-road dirt street town with a filling station and a depot. And they occasionally had square dances in one of these buildings, and my granddad played the fiddle and my grandma played the violin, and my dad called. So that was always fun.
Yeah.
And, in fact, I was at that Bluegrass festival. There were young girls playing the fiddle, and remember my granddad, he played On Golden Streets for me one day, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we came out. Dad worked in a business in town, couldn't make enough money there in Nebraska. So my Uncle Bob was out here in Niles, worked at National Standard, was a supervisor there, told him to come out, and that's what we did. 16 years old, we moved to Niles, and I went to the homeroom where I met him.
Where you met him, huh? Yep. Was he as good a load of corn as you were? Or?
I've never heard that, so I don't know.
Sparks. Were there sparks?
So Sandy, tell us about whatever you want to about your wedding, according.
Oh.
Did you guys
Oh.
go together a long time?
And, well, graduated in 58. He went right in the service. And he was in New York. At that time, he was in Texas, and he was in New York. He came home on New Year's Day weekend. We got married. It was a very small wedding. I borrowed the wedding gown, had the shower at his folks' house. We were there a couple days and loaded up my car that I had purchased. I worked at the lab in Niles at the hospital, and loaded up my stereo, had to have that,
That's right.
and went to Plattsburgh, New York, where Lori was born. We were there 2 years. She was born in 61. We were married in 60. And I hoped that she would have grandparents growing up and not be in the service. So he, when his time came, his 4 years, he resigned and we came back to Niles.
Okay.
And that would have been in 62.
Now, what did you do back here, Harley,
As far
as work?
as I worked when I got out of the service, one of the reasons I went into the service too was the fact that I couldn't find work. And if you applied for a job, they want to know if you had service taken care of. And of course, I said no. And they said, "Well, we don't want to hire you because we've got invested in you, and you're going to leave." So I went in the Air Force in '58. And when I got out in '62, there again, it was hard to find a job. And I managed to find a job at Garden City Fan and Blower. I worked there about 1.5 years. And my father-in-law's brother, her Uncle Bob, was the supervisor of National Standard, and we went to visit him one day. And he asked me about what I did, and I told him. He said, "Why don't you apply for National Standard?" And I said, "Well, I already have," but they were not hiring, and he said, "Be there Monday." So I worked there for 38 years.
Nice.
And after that, I had a small farm on the side, little 40 acres. We made hay. And she had her horses, the kids had their horses and the motorbikes and all that stuff. So we did that till I retired.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you had, I'm sorry, tell Lori. I'm sorry, Lori, and then Rick came along, and there's only two.
Right.
Only two children. Okay. And so you guys lived here in Niles all your life,
Right,
and you've
right.
got how many grandchildren now?
We had 7
Yay.
Seven grandchildren. Awesome.
and a few greats.
And a few
Oh.
greats.
Yeah.
And a few greats.
That's awesome.
You've been married 62 years. 62 years. Well,
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. That is awesome. So how did you find Jesus?
Actually, my wife did first.
Oh.
You want to tell your story about
Well,
Jeannie?
Lori had a boyfriend, and she was thinking about getting married. So I asked Jeannie, and we're friends with Jeannie Casado. And, is that all right? And if there was a church that Lori could get married in that she knew of, and she said, well, she had been going to a church, a Fairland church, and well, come out there and see. And I didn't know that. She told me she had been going and hadn't told me. And so Lori and I went the next Sunday, I believe, and walked in, and God spoke through that pastor.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
He's preached from the Word and walked out forever changed.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
No one else
Awesome.
changed
Awesome.
forever. And came home and told my husband, I'm going to church. He said, okay, but don't ask me. I said, okay. So that pastor showed up the next Monday in my driveway. There he pulled in. I was like, oh, what have I done? The pastor's in the driveway. Well, the kids were teenage kids. They were there. They had friends there. He came in and he started having a Bible study. Here's the miracle on top of that miracle. He had a 6 weeks vacation that summer from National Standard. He was there. He was up in the barn initially, working on a tractor. He wasn't interested at all in a Bible study. But that pastor, who was just the dearest man, didn't wear a black suit and carry a big black Bible. He was just an ordinary man, sort of extraordinary man. Walked up in the barn and talked to him every time.
Oh, I love it.
Before long, he was down at the table doing a Bible study with us.
That's wonderful.
Well, started taking his Bible to church to work in his lunch pocket,
Wow.
and he started going to church. And before long, we both made the decision to be baptized. And that pastor and his family became very close friends to us for a long time before they left the area.
Sure.
So that's it.
Sure.
That's how. Well, let me one more thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wasn't too long, and the pews were full of my family.
I love it.
Awesome.
My parents were there. Both of my kids, including Rick, were there. His sister, and I can't remember. I think that was it. So his mom eventually.
Awesome.
So we
Awesome.
have
Awesome.
a group of people waiting for
Waiting
us.
for you,
Yay.
yep. You better believe it.
That's
You
wonderful.
better believe it. So how did God work through that preacher?
Well, he come up there. I seen his car when he pulled in the driveway. I didn't know who it was or what it was, and he stayed in the house talking to the family for a little while. Well, then he wandered up to me, and I was working on a tractor. I had a can of Budweiser in one hand. I had a Winston in the other hand, and I was working.
Sure.
And he talked to me for a while. He was very friendly, very easygoing young man. And I was just impressed with the way he was
Sure.
presenting himself.
Sure.
And I liked what I saw. So he left. He didn't, no pressure. He left, and I told Sandy, I said, I like him. I like his church. I like to go to his church. And we went the following Sunday. I think that was probably my first time I stepped in church since I was married. And we loved the people. They were just wonderful people. I loved the pastor. And he would come and talk to me just man and man, and one-on-one, and it's just the way he presented Christ to me was just, I had to have it. I had to have it. So I made the decision one day to accept Christ, and he said, we'll do it now. And within an hour I was baptized. He didn't mess around.
Awesome.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
So Sandy, did you notice a difference in him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was, like I said, the habits were changing, and he was interested in learning more and becoming. It took us a while when we were young Christians and
Oh,
Sure.
sure.
in our
Absolutely.
40s, and
Sure.
this is
Yeah.
the change of, okay, this is different. But we started going to different Bible studies, got acquainted with different people in the church, and they became friends, and yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I remember going to a horse show on Sunday afternoon, and I worked 7 days a week most of the time. I worked 2 7s and a 5. I got off work at 8 o'clock in the morning. I had a 6-pack of beer in the front seat of my truck, and I went to this horse show where my wife and the kids were. And a friend of mine was sitting there on the ground having a beer. So I sat down with him, and I began to talk about the church. And I witnessed to him best I could. And when I got done, he said, now that's my kind of church. And he said, anybody will let me smoke and drink my beer? That's my kind of church. You know? And that was not my intention at all. And so when we got home that afternoon, I had 1 can of beer left. I was sitting at the kitchen table. And I told my wife what happened, and she said, do you think God was speaking through you and to you? And I said yes. And I
That-
said, that's
yeah.
my last can of beer. You just seen me drink it. And that was it.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
1982.
Wow.
Way to go.
Praise the
And
Lord.
last cigarette.
And
Yeah.
it was my last cigarette.
Wow.
Oh, was it?
Both of them cold.
Was it?
I was
Was it?
cold turkey.
Yay.
Awesome.
It was
So did my
awesome.
daddy. So did my daddy. Wow. Yay.
Yeah. Awesome.
So nice.
Awesome. So how did you come to missionary church?
I'm not sure.
Well, the church we were going to, Fairland,
Split.
split. It was a very traumatic thing for new Christians to go through because
So you were
we
fairly
heard
new
for
yet.
the pastor and how he was treated by some of the people
Mhm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were looking for a new church.
Mm-hmm.
We attended a few churches. Of course, I can't think of the name. Jeff has a
Assembly
Assembly
of God.
of God.
we went there, and we drove by our church, missionary
Yeah.
church.
Yeah, before Summit.
They were there on 31, and I'd see the people out there playing games and playing ball, and I thought, well, that looks like a nice group of people, and we'll just visit.
Mhm.
And we just stayed.
Yeah.
Good.
It's kind of what we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly
Kinda
what we did.
Yeah. Yep. So you have some grandchildren that you're pretty proud of. I know we can't say where, but you have at least one on the mission field.
Right. We have a granddaughter and
Mm-hmm.
on a mission trip over there, and
Mhm.
she just sold more for the God just to do His
I love
bidding,
it.
you know.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I mean, there's a young lady that's maybe 2 or 3 people in the whole town speak English,
Yeah.
so she has to spend a whole year just learning their language. And
I love it.
it's
Yeah.
just amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Quite
Awesome. Cool.
Wow.
Well, we're here to, unless you have something else, we're here to hear about a motorhome accident. I want every detail.
Well, my wife will have to help me out on this one.
Absolutely.
We decided to take a trip in 2007. My wife's family was having a reunion in Colorado. So we decided to take all the grandkids with us. So we rented a, pardon me, Super C, Class C, I believe it was an Eagle. And we picked up all the kids, loaded it up the next day, and we went west. And we stopped at several places on the way out. We found a nice campground in Colorado Springs. Rented a car there, went around and seen Garden of the Gods, Royal Gorge. What was that other nice place we went? I can't remember now. And then we took the rental car back and we got in the motorhome. And we were heading towards this town. It's just a little 2-track off of Denver. And along the way, I dropped the right front tire off the berm of the road. At the time, I thought I had a blowout, but it wasn't. It was me. And the motorhome tilted over on its side, and I knew we were going to roll over. My granddaughter was strapped in front seat with me, and motorhome went over, fell on its side, run about 75 yards, fell over on this roof, slid to a stop.
And your granddaughter was how old? That was in the right seat?
She was probably 10.
10.
Was that Brittany
Okay.
or was that
And,
Brittany or
Rebecca.
Rebecca? Okay.
She fortunately was strapped in due to the fact that my wife checked on her, make sure she was strapped in before she got up there. But anyway, the windshield cracked, and I could just see through that broken glass of us going over, hanging upside down in our belts. Everybody in the back was thrown everywhere. The closets were emptied, the refrigerator come open. I mean, just chaos in the back. My wife got hit in the head with a
Chest.
TV set in her chest. My youngest granddaughter, Brittany, I thought she was dead. Moved the debris away from her. She had a very large goose egg on her forehead over her eye. Her eye was shut. I couldn't see if she was breathing. And I thought she was gone. So we got out of that mess, and I looked around, and here come a truck driver, if it had coming the other way.
Okay, but before you go any further, Sandy, what do you remember of the accident?
That far.
I remember that for a long time we didn't see anybody on the road. It was like we were alone on the road. We saw the gazelles, antelope, and prairie dogs, but there wasn't anybody there. Well, when it started going, I had just gotten in the front seat and had gotten up, and Becca had gone in there, and I turned around and told her, "You're going to sit there, Becca. Put your seatbelt on." And went back and was sitting with Brittany behind them. Both Brittany and I were sitting there talking when everything started flying all over. I don't remember a lot of it except waking up. I couldn't breathe. I was buried. I think that big old TV came down on top of me because I had cracked ribs, bruised ribs, and split mouth and all of that. But I remember yelling for help so I could get free of all the things on top of me, and then standing up, and by that time a lot had happened, and that's when they were working on Brittany right behind me. And
So emergency personnel were there.
that's
by
the
that
miracle.
time.
That's one of the miracles.
Okay.
Even though there wasn't anybody there traveling down the road, all of a sudden we had a doctor that was in the car behind us. We had an EMT that was listening in that area to his
CB.
CB. He came, he rushed over. Yes. And Brittany was worried they were going to rip her dress. She was being very
Modest.
honest.
Yeah.
And I tried to help them with that, and help her, and I stood there and prayed for her.
So you had got out of the truck. You had got out of the vehicle.
The truck driver come over, he had a crowbar with him, and he had seen the whole thing coming at him. And he broke open the door. So I couldn't get through the side doors of the cab. They were bent beyond repair. And he got the door open so that everyone could get out. And I was worried about fire because my propane was on for the refrigerator. So I asked him to put me up on top, which is the bottom, and I turned the gas off. By then, this couple just finished his schooling on the doctor. He was on his way to his new assignment, and he was right there to help us. And the EMT was on his way to work, and they heard everything over the radios. Of course, the police were called, everything. Ambulances came. And here we were in the middle of nowhere with, like she said, is just telephone poles and woodchucks. There's nothing out there. All of a sudden, these people appeared within minutes. And my whole family was sitting along the road being attended to. And state police come over there, and he wanted to know if anything was wrong. And I told him I think I blew a tire. And he checked, and he said, "No, your tires are fine." And he said, "You dropped off the berm." So we were all taken to different hospitals. A helicopter flew in from Denver, took my granddaughter to head trauma in Denver because of her massive injuries to her face. I spent the night with her in the hospital, and I just didn't want her alone. And her dad and everybody was back here in Michigan, so I spent the night with her just to help her out.
Which granddaughter was that, Harley?
That was
Was
Becca.
that
Becca
Brittany?
was the one that got away. She was up there with me.
Yeah,
And
but that was Brittany, right?
Brittany was the
Didn't
one
I
that was.
remember too, she had teeth knocked out or
Yeah,
something.
She lost some teeth.
Yeah, I remember.
And,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What one of the reasons too, the miracles in preparation for what God knew was ahead of us. When we went to get that motorhome, came in that day. It was brand new. It was a really long one. It had like 3 TVs and bunk beds and beds in the back, and it was a huge motorhome, not motorhome, Class C, and they made us wait all day, and it was so irritating to me because I had so much to do. We had to get home, we had to get back, and the kids were coming. We're going to leave in the morning. Why is this taking so long? Well, because it had just come in and they thought that was the one we should have, the brand new one. So what we found out is when we got to the hospital, the medical personnel there said, we don't see this kind of thing, accident without a death, fatality.
Mm-hmm.
What we found out is that motorhome, being brand new, was reinforced with the roof so it wouldn't collapse.
Was it?
Wow.
Was it?
So that was the one God
Mm-hmm.
said we needed to be
Yeah.
Wow. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lord.
in. So yeah, He prepared us for
Mm-hmm.
it. We had 5 grandchildren with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
The thing of it was too, the motorhome that we were going to get was still out. They hadn't brought it back. The renter hadn't brought it back.
Wow.
So they put us in a new one with 115 miles on it.
Wow.
And they had to put in the TVs. They had to prep it up and get it all ready. It took all day.
Wow.
So, and that had that roll cage in it, which we didn't know.
Wow.
We found out later.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord.
Those things collapse when they come apart.
Yeah.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah. I've seen them come apart on the highway.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ugly.
You pick it up in pieces. Yeah. Yeah. So what did you think when you first stopped? What were you thinking? How did you end up getting out?
Well, I ended up getting out through the side door that this trucker had opened with a crowbar. You had to pry the door
Okay.
open. He helped me out. I think I probably stumbled a little bit or something.
Sure.
I was just dumbfounded. I thought, boy, what have I done? What have I done?
Of course.
And I look back inside. I see everybody scrambling, trying to get out. There was kids in the back bedroom. There was kids in the dining room table. I mean, they were sitting at the table,
Sure.
just driving along, looking out the window. And old Grandpa here, we just dropped the wheel off the side of the road. And to this day, I do not know what caused me to do that, but obviously I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt horrible. I felt horrible. Not only my grandkids, but my wife, she's over there all bruised
Right.
up and bleeding. What did I do?
So how did you see God work through that?
Mainly the fact that we all walked away, and the fact that those people were there to
Yeah,
help
right
us.
there.
I mean, we were out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
No phone,
Yeah.
no phone
Yeah.
service. And to have these people just come up on us within the next few minutes
Mm-hmm.
and be prepared to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a miracle right there.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, another miracle in preparation was mentioned that we're on our way to a family reunion of my family. And my brother had traveled from North Dakota to come to that family reunion, along with other family members, and my brother and his wife. So in the emergency room, we had all his family sitting there comforting us, waiting to see how they could take care of us. And my brother was there, and he's the one that took us to Denver to see Brittany in the hospital. He had just retired and built a new home in North Dakota. Beautiful new home. He'd been in Vietnam and gone to college, was an engineer, worked for Alcoa, retired, had a beautiful home out there. And he was 7 years younger than I am. And he took us to his home, and fed us and took care of us and gave us a place to be while we took care of Brittany until her family, Rick and his person, and Lori and Brian and Dana, all came rushing for Brittany and the other kids, of course, because we didn't have a vehicle.
Right.
So they all came, but in the meantime, we had probably 4 or 5 days there with Dean and Jerry in their home. They came in there as well. And where I'm going with this is that was the last time I saw my brother.
Oh, was it?
He, Jerry called me about, I think it was in November following that, in the middle of the night, saying that she'd gone to bed. He was brushing his teeth and he dropped to the floor. Into the doctor with a sore shoulder.
Yep.
And the doctor treated the shoulder.
Mm.
So I'm very grateful for that time we had with him.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very special, because he was a special man.
Yeah. God knew you needed that.
He did.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So, lasting injuries. Let's start with, how did Brittany get home?
Brittany spent, I think, 3 days, maybe 4 days in the hospital there. And then her dad took her home.
Okay.
And they come out and got her after the accident.
Mm-hmm.
And as it did all the family come out. So she went home, but she, like I said, had lost some teeth.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, she has, I think they would, it's not really a migraine, it's,
Yeah, she gets bad
she
at
gets
it.
these spells.
Mhm.
And I think it was due to the head injury.
Mm-hmm.
And but it doesn't stop her.
Doesn't it?
No,
Good.
no.
Good.
She's a sweetheart.
Good.
And the rest of us just walked away with our bumps and bruises, and we healed up. And we getting ready to go home. My son-in-law said, "Do you want to drive?" I said, "No." I did not want to get behind the wheel. I just had a fear, and it was a while before I would even
Sure.
drive.
Sure.
And we should say that you've pulled campers for years, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you've pulled campers, so the fact that you slipped off that roadway is really strange.
Yeah.
That would happen.
It was an awful narrow road. I mean, it's just a 2-lane road, but I mean, obviously there were semis on it, so I mean, there was room.
Yeah.
That right front
Yeah.
tire went off. Like I say, I thought it was a blown tire, but we checked and
Yeah.
everything was fine. So it was something I did.
Yeah. That's why God saves us from ourselves sometimes.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else you want to share about the accident?
No, we went back. They towed it to a junkyard, and we went to the junkyard and got a few belongings out of it. I mean, being upside down, all the tanks emptied, so
Sure.
everything in there was practically ruined. So I got a few tools, and we got some odds and ends of it. They walked away, left it sitting in a junkyard. And then the insurance company, I could go into that a little bit. Our insurance company said, well, that was an $85,000 motorhome, and we want our money back. So the insurance companies struggled fighting it over. And I had a letter from my insurance company saying I was protected from accidents and whatnot. And I had that in writing, which I had to show them before I could get the motorhome. So I was good there. The insurance company settled that.
Thank
But then the owner of the RV company says, wait a minute, you've had that trailer, I could have rented it out, and it's been out of service. So I need $10,000 for lost wages on that trailer, camper. And I called my insurance company, and he said, don't worry about it. you're not going to pay them a dime. And I didn't. So they settled that.
Thank you, Lord.
So that was a praise to the Lord right there.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly.
Amen. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So have you drove a motorhome again?
Yeah, I pulled a couple fifth wheels since then. Yeah,
Have you?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Good.
yeah,
Good.
we went to Florida for 13 winters before
Oh.
we give it up.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Enjoyed it immensely.
Nice.
Yay.
So God healed that scar too.
He did. He
Yeah.
did.
Praise
did.
God.
Good.
That's wonderful.
But if you ask my grandkids if they want to go on a trip with Grandpa, they say no.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just kidding.
Yeah.
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 Well, they were preteens then.
Yeah, they were young.
They're in their 30s now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
Brittany was actually in my Sunday school class.
was she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was.
Wow.
Yep.
At that time,
Yep.
just so you got to know
Yep.
a
Just
little bit about
a little
this.
bit. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a sweetheart. She's
Yeah.
got 3 special kids. And
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
loves the Lord.
That's
It's awesome.
wonderful.
Awesome.
She had a good mom.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, that's our story for today. As you heard, God showed up at just the right just the right time and provided everything that Harley and Sandy needed to keep their family safe. It's been several years since that accident, and I can tell you that their family is growing and wonderful, wonderful family. They have laid a good foundation, and I so love telling their story. I'm so happy that they were willing to be vulnerable enough to share with us something that's not always easy for someone to share, is where they made a mistake. I'm so encouraged that God protects us from ourselves. In Harley's situation, it was a tire dropped off the road. In my situation, it was not paying attention to where I was going and running into the back of a car. Many, many situations where God works in spite of ourselves. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming by. Please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. For you who are coming to specifically hear Harley and Sandy's story, please subscribe and stick around. Check out some of the other stories. We have many, many stories. We have one coming. I believe the next one will be a pastor and the loss of his wife, and how God did not leave him alone, but provided another helpmate that will walk through him through this section of his life. So I'm looking forward to hearing that story too. That should be out on Friday. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hit that like button, my friend, if you would. Leave us a comment. We would love to. Please encourage Harley and Sandy. Harley and Sandy were one of our very first. Harley says he's one of the first 5 to subscribe to our channel. They have always supported our channel, supported Debbie and I. So please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Thank you very much. We'll see you again on Friday. God bless.